your weekly in-depth view of agriculture up close. This is In the Field. Today we're here in Lowry City, Missouri to meet up with one of my good friends, Matt Noakes, and see what he's doing to prepare for harvest. Hey Matt.
Hi Jamie.
Thanks for letting us come hang out with you for the day.
My pleasure.
Well, we're in Lowry City, central St. Clair County. Take me through the terrain. What do we see around here? What are you farming?
Well, the slogan for Lowry City is where the Ozarks meets the plains. It's a very transitional area with a lot of diversified agriculture, cattle and row crop ground.
And that's the definition of your farm here, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, when it comes to late summer, it's kind of the calm before the storm when it comes to harvest right around the corner. So a day in the life of Matt Noakes probably changes every single day. But this time of the year, what are you working on?
Well, one of the biggest things we're working on is getting our machinery ready to go for harvest and cleaning out bins and getting ready for all that. And along with it, we're still baling some hay and dealing with a few pink eye problems and so on in the cattle herd.
Let's head on into the shop and see what you have working on in there.
All right, sounds good.
Well, Matt, I know you well, so I can look here at this big machine and call it your big toy, but it's really your combine, a vital piece of equipment when it comes to harvest. This time of the year, what are you looking at?
Well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over it and give it a complete inspection to see what might have happened last harvest that we need to make sure is ready for this harvest. Besides just all the normal maintenance that you might do to your car, you know, change the oil, check the air in the tires and all that kind of thing. You know, it may sound really simple, but just like a car at home, you know, the tires are incredibly important. If they're aired up too high, you can have excess compaction, and if they're too low, you can ruin a tire. And
the price of a tire.
Exactly. One of these tires is you know, $3,000 to $5,000, depending on one of the front or rear.
Wow, wow. Technology is a big aspect of agriculture today, and it's not just you know, the technologies and the traits in the field. It's the equipment here. And I understand that, you know, you wouldn't be able to operate without Wi-Fi in your barn. So how has the technology changed in your lifetime here?
Well, you know, first combine I ran was made in '79, and you know, it was nothing but levers and knobs and started with a screwdriver, you know, so, but you know, this one, you know, has all yield mapping, records all our yields as we go through the field. We can see where the good areas are and places that might need some attention with something else. When we're harvesting soybeans and wheat, it'll steer itself and drive us back and forth in the field. And I feel like that allows us to do a better job harvesting because I can pay more attention to what's actually going on with the combine, what's, you know, how it's feeding, how it's cleaning and so on, as opposed to just having to stare at a steering wheel.
And keep a straight line.
Right.
Which can be difficult.
Right. Grain is very abrasive, so we have to get on inside of the combine and look for wear on steel even, and it'll eventually wear holes in it.
Well, I think it's time to head out into the field because I know crop scouting is a big aspect of it. You're seeing these plants at least every day.
Yes.
So Matt, we're in one of your cornfields, and this was probably planted early April?
About April 5th. And
what are our yields potentially looking like this year, considering the flux of weather that we had this spring?
We had a very wet spring, but and about half of our corn that was planted after this was just not a viable stand and ended up had to be destroyed, and we ended up planting soybeans in those fields. But this earlier planted stuff seems to be relatively decent. We hope for slightly above average yields, you know, maybe somewhere in the 150 bushel a acre range.
So when you're out scouting fields, what are you looking at? What are you looking for?
In the corn this time of year, we're actually just looking for maturity and where the milk line is within the ear. These are almost completely mature. As you see, there's really no milk left in that ear. Sometimes you can even look at the end of a kernel and look for something called black layer. And this isn't quite there yet. So it's still putting nutrients into this ear. Anyway, this corn, probably as it is right here, is probably about 3 weeks out from harvest.
3 weeks out. So we're looking at, you know, by the end of September.
Easily.
Well, we've seen your corn. Let's head over to your bean fields.
All right, let's go.
So a fun fact, you just shared with me that this was the first piece of land that you bought on your own. What has it taken to make it this beautiful soybean field that we see today?
Well, I bought this farm in 2010, and it hadn't been farmed in over 20 years.
Wow.
And I spent somewhere around 1,000 hours between on a dozer and a skid steer pulling sprouts just to make it farmable.
A labor of love.
It is. It is.
So today we're looking at your 2019 bean crop. When did this go in the ground?
This went in the ground about June 3rd.
And what type of growth are we seeing this year?
Really, height-wise for when they were planted, these are really, I think they're spectacular. You know, good bloom. We're still blooming. We're still setting pods. We are starting to see some sudden death syndrome come into some of these soybeans. Just kind of a product of the wet year that we've had. It pulls a toxin out of the soil, and it can kill the plant somewhat prematurely and limit yield some, but overall it's fairly minor, and I think we'll have a fairly good bean crop.
What are we looking at harvest date on these?
Probably early October.
So the last spot on the farm for these beans and your corn, once harvested, is the bins back on the farm. Let's go check those out and see what prep we're doing with them.
Yeah, let's go take a look.
So you have 4 grain storage bins here on your home site. Take me through the advantages of being able to store that grain on your farm and how it kind of maximizes efficiencies for your operation.
Well, number one, it allows us to keep moving during harvest with one truck. We don't have to wait in lines at the elevators, and we're able to keep the combine running because we can just come home here and unload, and we don't close at 5 o'clock.
So some of your bins, like this one, are empty this time of year. You've shipped and sold, and others still have beans in them. Take me through what drives the sale of your beans.
Well, we're obviously always looking at the changing market conditions and so on, and part of the reason we have beans left over is just because of demand and price. We just haven't felt like it's been a profitable price to sell at. So we are carrying over some soybeans here into this harvest.
And where, from year to year, are you selling your beans?
Most of the soybeans end up in St. Louis and go on a barge down the river.
And corn?
Corn, most of our corn ends up in Springfield at one of the several feed mills down there.
Great access.
It is. We just run out, jump on 13 highway, and in an hour and 15 minutes, we're sitting at a feed mill.
Well, you talked about your lean team. You know, you've got one truck and trailer hauling, grain back and forth. How do you utilize that in the season? And it probably plays multiple or wears multiple hats.
It does. I mean, it's really just as vital as the combine during harvest, because if we can't move the grain in here to the bin, it doesn't do any good to run the combine.
So we're here in front of one of your empty grain bins. Take me through what you're doing to get it ready for this year's harvest.
Well, one of the first things we're going to do is try to get them completely clean, and that'll help to reduce bug pressure with the new grain going into it.
So about how many bushels are we looking at this bin storing?
This bin will hold about 40,000 bushel of corn, which is over 40 semi-loads of corn.
So Matt, you're born and raised here on this farm. How many generations of your family have farmed this land, and what does it mean to you to be a part of it?
Well, my son's the 4th generation on this farm, and I've never lived anywhere else. Nothing makes me more proud than to be farming this ground for future generations.